It was amazing. Yeah, from start to finish. Absolutely beautiful.
I was gonna spoil the heck out of it.
No, not today.
No, a little bit.
Well...
What was the movie about for you?
Abuse. And it's psychological as hell. It was amazing. It puts you in the mind space of just being abused and dealing with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely took a really grim take on the whole thing.
Yeah.
I forgot the name. I forgot the name of the director. He co-wrote also Saw, the first one.
Oh, interesting.
And he's the actor who is chained up right there with that other guy in that. Yeah, I forgot his name. I should have thought about it, but that is his movie. And he wanted to change like perception and everything, and it really worked.
Very good.
Really well.
Yeah.
Because like when I first saw the trailer, I was like, nah, I'm not gonna watch that. It's
yeah,
just
the trailer didn't do
like,
much for me.
I think about like Chevy Chase being chased by Sam Neill, or you have like Kevin Bacon in your head when you think about like any kind of like
Hollow
Invisible Man movies.
Hollow Man, Kevin Bacon will forever be the Hollow Man. You'll never take that from me.
Terrible movie.
Yeah. So welcome guys to the Red Lodge, brought to you today by Capital Broadcast Network. We have a very exciting episode lined up for us today. We're going to be talking about censorship and the Motion Picture Association of America and CARA, also known as the Classifications and Ratings Administration. Something quite over the top. Makes it governmenty.
Yeah, I will never be able to say this without actually reading it from something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need to have a
What was it called again? CARA?
CARA, yeah, super
CARA.
So Mike, you come from European countries, correct? You have resided. You are my European acquaintance across the pond. Now, when you came to America, culturally, and I would say film-wise, would you consider us much more conservative than the Europeans?
Yes, in certain ways, and no in other ways.
Okay.
Yeah, the big difference. I mean, we want to like dive in order to get to the material of that, which is really fascinating, morbid, and also full of fun facts. But ultimately, the history of the MPAA, we just have to dig into that a tiny bit, just to have the basic understanding.
Well, let's absolutely do it.
Let's just dive into that, and then we're gonna get into the material, so we have a full understanding about like how stupid the rating system is, because it is. It's absolutely ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense.
It's quite silly. Yeah, absolutely quite silly. Well, if you guys didn't know, the MPAA stands for the Motion Picture Association of America, and it was founded in 1922 by General Will Hayes. And basically, it was originally actually created as the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America. Its primary function was to make sure that people were investing into the film industry and making sure that the film industry had a moral code to go by. They also really created the guidelines for actors and how Hollywood should behave off screen. Because at this time, Hollywood was almost brand new.
Yes.
Film industry was brand new.
Really important there that they did that on purpose in order to have privatized control about how the movies we're supposed to make in response to the government trying to censor movies in general.
Yeah.
Because they figured out that movies in the back like in the 20s were actually a really big deal during that time, because it was like around all those time when all those amazing movies came out.
The Roaring 20s.
The Roaring 20s.
Yeah, black market.
We had a pandemic there too. Amazing.
Crash,
we're celebrating basically almost 100 years now.
100 years. Oh shit.
Oh,
yeah,
close. 100 years
Roaring
of
20s. It's starting off.
Nonsense. It's amazing. I love it. It's great.
Full circle. Yeah. So originally there weren't really ratings created for movies at that time, but there were codes. It was they called them the general principle codes. And I do have the 3 here, and I'm gonna read them off real quick, just so you guys.
From 1930.
Yeah, this is the 1930s.
They were founded in 1922 in order to have a response to the government, but in 1930, they actually established those codes. Yeah,
correct. Yeah. So the first code, and this is as is. No picture shall be produced that will lower the moral standards of those who see it. Hence, the sympathy of the audience should never be thrown to the side of crime, wrongdoing, evil, or sin.
That's so funny, because like this is so vague about like how you perceive it religiously.
It's incredibly Quaker. That's how I
felt. Like there is the movie The Rope, Alfred Hitchcock's The Rope, and it is about two men in an apartment, and they just killed someone with the rope, or and they put him in a box right there, but they're like only 20 minutes away from actually having a party at that apartment. And one of them is completely freaking out while the other one is just trying to play it cool.
Yeah.
And the fun fact about this movie is like that always has been guessed those two characters are gay, but it could never be like actually revealed in the movie because like in those times they were pretty homophobic.
Yeah, incredibly frowned upon. It was like a super taboo.
Yeah.
Not even that. It was just absolutely not even heard of. Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah. The terrible history. Yeah. The second principle, correct standards of life, subject only to the requirements of drama and entertainment, shall be presented. So everything has to be at an incredibly American standard at all times, according to that principle, is what I get from it. And it's quite silly. And the last one, law, natural or human, shall not be ridiculed, nor shall sympathy be created for its violation. Yeah. You can really tell by reading these and just listening to them how old the times were when this came out. And it's super silly when you hear it now. It's like, this is how I read these and I think I can't make a movie immediately.
Ultimately, because like it goes against, because they wanted to have the control over movies that were trying to establish the art of controversy, basically.
Yeah, right.
And that's what movies are.
Yeah,
and they try
right.
to have control over that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then there's another thing too about these principal codes. They had something called particular applications, which they just went into details about the codes. And I just found a couple that were really interesting to me that really stood out because they were so telling of the times. The first one says, references to sex perversions such as homosexuality and venereal disease were forbidden, as were depictions of childbirth. So at those times, those subjects were absolutely banned from it. And even if it had a relation to the storyline, which is what we were just talking about, the homosexuality, right? And it comes into full circle where it's just don't do it, right? That's all the companies are saying.
It's gonna blow everyone's mind when they figure out like when they actually like got rid of those kind of rules.
Yeah, the lateness. Yeah. And then just one more that I thought was incredibly like I expected it, but it sucks that it was actually like a written thing. Portrayals of miscegenation were forbidden. Miscegenation is pretty much, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's pretty much interracial relationships. You couldn't see that on screen at that time. It was just absolutely forbidden to have on the screen. Primarily, again, because they hold this light of an American household, right? You want to make sure that is still protected, even in film, which I thought was silly, super silly to me, incredibly
That's a pretty
racist.
mild word for that.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it is. It was definitely pretty harsh when you look back into history and you see something like that, and that a private company like that is still established because the MPAA still exists.
Yeah.
And they basically just have shifted their wording to a certain degree.
Big time, yeah.
Because in 1966, or in between 1966 and 1968, they actually switched over to our
ratings
system that we have right now.
Yeah,
the good old rating system. Like if something, the general
audience, G,
the general audience. Then we have the PG-13.
You forgot PG.
I'm sorry. Yeah, PG. Sorry, I already skipped. Yeah, PG. PG. Yeah, parental guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the PG-13.
Mm-hmm.
We have the R rating. And during that time, we still had the X rating. That was significantly different there. The only big difference is the R rating and the X rating originally was having the same goal, just with the difference that with the R rating, you were able to bring someone younger as long as you were actually
Wait, are you saying R rating or NC-17?
The R rating. The NC-17. I'm not talking about the NC-17 at all.
Gotcha.
Just like with the X rating, the same. It happens with the NC-17. Just turns into the eventually later on from the X rating.
Okay.
So just like rename it later.
Gotcha.
So it is then called NC-17 later.
Gotcha.
But ultimately, the same goal, just with the difference, if there would be a movie, you wouldn't be allowed before 18 to actually go into this movie. Yeah, with the X rating or aka NC-17.
Right.
And the R rating you would be allowed, so your parents would be able. So there it shifts because you have certain movies that are R-rated, and you have certain movies that are then X-rated or NC-17 rated. Right. Like, I mean, the X rating didn't last long, so the NC-17 rating eventually took over, and they were able to shift everything in their very much racist and homophobic ways, because like certain movies would be just shown as like NC-17 as soon as there would be any kind of like homosexual sex in there.
Right.
It also is dependent on like how many thrusts for heterosexual sex. That's hilarious. Yeah. It's like a few seconds you can can get away with. A few seconds, but then like if it's a little bit longer, it's like longer lasting. And it's an NC-17.
The big thing that I was reading about it that's really, I guess, sad about it is as a production company, let's say you're producing movies, you do not want your movie to get an NC-17 rating. You want it to remain at an R at maximum, because then your distribution is completely limited when you have a movie that's rated NC-17.
I wouldn't say it's a general rule. It is just like
movie theaters won't play it. Movie theaters are the theater
the only
companies
indie movie. Yeah, the mainstream ones won't play it if you have an NC-17 rating.
Correct. Yeah, and I mean these are the companies that were a part of the Motion Picture Association, were all the massive companies that were going on, and they didn't want NC-17.
Stanley Kubrick wouldn't give a fuck because
Clockwork Orange is
an NC-17 movie. Oh, back in the days,
it was X.
It's X. It was X rating. It was an X-rated movie.
Stanley Kubrick didn't give a fuck.
He didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
No, the only thing was like that they had to like take out certain scenes of eyes wide shut, or they had to just cut it down a few seconds.
Oh, really?
Think, in order to make it an R rating.
Really?
Because for the
that was like what,
90s,
right? 94 or something?
Yeah, that
was
with
Tom Cruise.
Last movies, with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
It's a good movie, and it's also not a movie that you watch in order to be like, to get like...
No. You get nothing from it.
Good about like sexuality or anything like that. It was a weird fucking movie. And
interesting
scene.
Tom Cruise. Yeah. Interesting scene about when Tom Cruise is walking in the street, he's strutting and then he's upset and he like claps his hands. That scene behind him was actually all just like a screen. He wasn't really walking in a street or anything. I thought it was really great. Yeah. Nice. That was a really interesting scene. I was like, oh, that's smartly shot. So yeah, we talked about the rating changes. There's actually an interesting fact about PG-13. So the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Gremlins, they got a lot of complaints about the violence and the gore that was in those movies. So what Steven Spielberg directed the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, and he produced Gremlins. So he pitched the idea in, I think it was 84 or in the early 80s. He said, let's create something in between. Let's create something between PG and R. What about PG-13? And so in 84, the first movie released with a PG-13 rating